The history of rock is a story of near misses and buried treasures, filled with bands that burned brightly but never quite broke through. One stormed out of Australia with its fuzzed-out mod hooks, while another all-girl group emerged from LA's fierce 1980s scene. There's a group that had all the makings of being the next big star but never quite got their due. A Midwest act that delivered tight, high-energy rock, and a New York group that revived Mersey beat for the modern era. What do they all have in common? They're all long-lost bands that are just f***ing awesome. Think you know who they are? Stick around and find out. Welcome to Pop Rocks Radio. As always, I'm your host, Bijan. Been away for a while. Please excuse the G.I. Joe beard. It's been really freaking cold up here in the Northwest these past few months. We have a lot of fun things planned for you guys, and we really appreciate you hanging out with us. All right, let's dive in. What could be more badass in 1970s New York City than playing British invasion rock in a sea of punk and glam? This band has been called the missing link between the Beatles and the Ramones, signing to Bomb Records and delivering their perfect mix of jangle, harmonies, and mod-era cool. Their members went on to form the bands Sorrows and Boyfriends. So who is this band? The band is the Poppees. Emerging from the same downtown scene that birthed punk, they were a throwback in the best way possible, mixing the spirit of the Cavern Club era with the urgency of CBGB's underground. Signed to legendary Bomb Records, they released a handful of singles including If She Cries and Jealousy, capturing the sound of 1964 with the energy of 1976. While the garage rock known in the 60s may have faded away, it came roaring into the 80s with a vengeance, powered by fuzz pedals, Farfisa organs, and a fierce all-female lineup. This band from LA stormed onto the scene in the 80s, channeling the raw energy of 60s garage while staring down a male-dominated underground. They weren't just revivalists, they were revolutionaries in go-go boots, and one of them would go on to front one of the most beloved pop-punk bands of the 90s. So who is this band? That band was the Pandoras. Led by the unstoppable Paula Pierce, they took their love of Nuggets-era garage and turned it into something loud, stylish, and unapologetically bold. Starting on Vox Records before flirting with major label interests, the Pandoras became cult icons, equal parts retro and riot. And that fiery lineup would eventually include Kim Shattuck, who would go on to front the Muffs and carve out her own unforgettable place in power pop and punk history. This is a band from Western Australia who were first active from 1983 to 1987, though they have reformed multiple times over the years since. Their sound combined the raw edge of garage rock with the chimey goodness of power pop, emerging just as Sydney was rediscovering the mod-era music and fashion of the 60s. The lead single from their debut album was also included on the soundtrack to the Australian
I'm a Tasmanian
mega hit Young Einstein in 1988. So who is this band? Oh yes, it's the Stems. Okay, I fudged a little bit on this one. These guys are neither long lost nor forgotten. They're f***ing legends. Founded by Don Mariani and Richard Lane, they released their debut album, At First Sight, Violets Are Blue, in 1987, an album that has since been recognized as one of the top Australian albums of all time. The long-awaited second album, Heads Up, followed in 2007. Though they're legends in Australia, they remain criminally underrated in the US. Though we lost Richard Lane in 2020, the band is still hitting the road and studio, blasting out their own fierce brand of fuzzed-out rock and roll, keeping the spirit of raw, high-energy garage rock alive. What do you get when you mix British invasion harmonies, crunchy guitar riffs, and a hometown scene buzzing with the early energy of Cheap Trick and Shoes? In the late 70s, this band had the look, the hooks, and the charm, so much so that they scored a national TV appearance on The Today Show, where the host referred to their music as the sound everybody will be talking about. Their debut album even featured a guest appearance by Clarence Clemens of the E Street Band. Their name is a take on a popular Austrian anti-smoking candy. So who is this band? Of course, we're talking about Pezband. Pezband formed in 1971 in Oak Park, Illinois. They burst onto the scene with their self-titled debut in 1977 on Passport Records, delivering chiming guitars and Beatlesque melodies infused with an almost punk energy. While Pezband shares the hallmarks that defined power pop in the late 70s, their music has a distinct edge that sets them apart from their peers, with hooks that are both adventurous and accessible. Though they never quite hit the mainstream, Pezband has maintained a loyal following throughout their various incarnations over the years, leaving a legacy of timeless power pop anthems that continue to inspire both fans and musicians alike. They weren't from Memphis or Liverpool, but you wouldn't know that by listening to them. Today's number one band came out of late 70s London with a sound that split the difference between jangly American FM radio and British invasion hooks. A track written as a swipe at their former manager unexpectedly became the power pop anthem. At one point, a future solo star with a smoky voice and a knack for heartfelt pop briefly joined their lineup. Their classic debut album was produced by the same legendary producer who brought us albums by AC/DC, The Cars, Britney Spears, and Muse. So who is our number one band? That band was the Records. Formed in the late 70s by John Wicks and Will Birch of the Kersal Flyers, they broke out with Starry Eyes, a track now considered essential listening for power pop fans. Their debut album, Shades in Bed, produced by Robert Mutt Lange, delivered tight harmonies, chiming guitars, and an emotional chord that elevated them beyond the genre's typical sugar rush. Jude Cole, just 19 at the time, joined briefly for their second album, Crashes, before launching his own successful solo career. They toured with the Cars, had major label support, and even performed on the Midnight Special in 1979. Still, like many power pop greats, they hovered just outside the mainstream. Lineup shifted, but John Wicks remained the band's heart and soul until his passing in 2018. Today, the Records are remembered as one of power pop's most beloved cult favorites, an enduring reminder of melody, craft, and what could have been. This is Bijan from Pop Rocks Radio. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.